All right. Thank you, Suvi. So, like briefly introduced, my name is Olli Sinerma. I work as a senior advisor at Business Finland, focusing mainly on game companies. This presentation was originally made like in 2021, just to focus on explaining gaming companies in Finland, how the Business Finland funding systems work for you. And later on, it was updated by my colleague Kari Korhonen, and it's pretty up to date at the moment. And though this is focused on creative companies and especially for game companies, all of these funding instruments are available for any industry whatsoever, where you maritime, healthcare, educational, whatsoever. But I'm using them and showing the examples as how they work for gaming industry companies. Okay, let's begin. Briefly about Business Finland. So Business Finland is a government agency, and we focus on helping the Finnish companies grow in international markets. And we do this in multiple ways. Mostly we are known for our funding instruments, which we go briefly in a few minutes, but we also provide other services. Like if your company wants to expand to another country in European Union, China, United States, we have offices all over the globe. So you can contact us and we can help you expand into the other markets. We are not, of course, the only funder in Finland, but what we focus especially on is early stage startups and their growth, and that's for creating innovations. And those international innovations are our main thing that we focus on. And what is an innovation? It's pretty much something that is new in the markets, and hopefully at least in minimum in Finnish markets, but preferably, of course, in foreign markets, because all of our funding instruments are focused only for companies that go beyond the borders of Finland. Usually this is not a problem for game companies because, well, of course, all of your markets are abroad, but just making sure that everybody knows this. But let's begin with the different kind of funding instruments that we have at Business Finland. And I'll go them in sort of like an order, which I think is a typical way for game companies to proceed. So the first one is the innovation voucher. This is for companies that are in really early stages. They have just thought about like idea that what they want to work on, and they want to create a prototype of it. You can use this 6,000 euro, which is a grant for companies, de minimis form of grant, to purchase some service. If you are planning to become a big stock company and getting VCs abroad, you can use this, for example, to get your legal documents in order. But you can also, like in my example, create a prototype of this Clash of Squirrels of War mobile MMO game and purchase it from a programmer. This funding is available for all companies, but there are certain requirements. For example, that you need to be a full-time entrepreneur inside the company and have at least 3 months been in the company before you can apply for this one. And there is also a 1,000 euro requirement that you must spend on the project, and the government will fund the rest. And after this presentation, we have some time for questions and answers. So let's save the questions for that time, but just mark them down if you have something on different kind of instruments. But the innovation voucher is the first one to get your idea forward. And this is given only once in a company lifetime. Then, apparently I'm missing one slide here, but it's about tempo. For some reason, it's a tempo continuous, but I'll give you a brief about tempo. So tempo is a 60,000 euro grant. It's for a company, and this is unfortunate that I'm missing one slide here because this is the most important funding for Finnish gaming companies. Almost everybody has applied for this at some point. And the 6,000 euros, it's totally de minimis grant, and the requirements are that your company has a product that you are ready to test on a foreign market. For example, that you have a game in a soft launch. I can double check if on my different device I have this slide, so I'm not missing something important to tell you guys. There we go. Yeah, sorry for this small mess up. I have checked the papers before. Yeah, there we go. All right, so in my original file I had that the class of squirrels of war that we were previously making the demo out is now looking pretty promising, but we don't yet have investors on board for the company. And we would need to pimp the game up a bit so that the investors get interested. We start to get better numbers, our metrics are better. So this is definitely meant for that kind of work. The grant is 60,000 euros and covers 75% of the project costs. So the whole project that you work on Tempo must be something around 80,000 euros. And we pay upfront 70% of the money when you are approved for Tempo, and the rest of the 30% of the cash is left for after the project ends, when you have filed in your end report and we have approved it.
Sorry, Olli.
Sure.
Am I the only one who doesn't see the actual the new Tempo slide? Because I see
you cannot see the Tempo continue slide.
I see Tempo continues, but not the Tempo you mentioned.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, the issue was that I didn't actually have it on this presentation.
Okay.
So
sorry.
I'm reading the Tempo from different slide and showing this one where I go further on. But about the Tempo, there are some requirements that you need to fulfill. All of this is of course available on Business Finland's pages. So when you are applying to these, please check the information on the site so you are up to date what the current requirements are. But the minimum is that the company needs to have 2 full-time employees. And one of those full-time employees must actually be a person who is 100% working for this company that is applying for the Tempo. And the second full-time person can be, example, 3 people who all work like 1/3 of their time for the company. And that creates 2. Also, we require that the company has the minimum of 30,000 euros in its own capital on the balance sheet, or as a letter of intention from an investor that he is going to invest in the company. In this kind of case, we can make a decision that, well, when you get the money from the investor, we can put the Tempo into action and you will be granted it. This is of course available only once per company, and there is the option that if you do a total pivot, you can get the second Tempo, but the pivot doesn't mean in this sense that you just create a new game. It's just your company changes its direction totally. Now you're making, I don't know, virtual reality headgear, for example. And usually it takes about 40 days for us to go through your application on the day after the date that you have filed to it. And now on the Tempo continue slide. So when you are working on the Tempo and you think about getting one, we will help you with the application. There are many consultants that are providing help on the Business Finland fundings, and sometimes I think they are useful, especially on the bigger R&D fundings. They might help you with the paperwork, and of course your company has grown, so you have more interesting or important things to do than work with the government bureaucracy. But for Tempo, and especially for Innovation Voucher, they are pretty simple. I'd say that you should be able to do them on your own, and you have much more use for this money at that point than paying a consultant. Our target at Business Finland is not to find ways that how can we find that, haha, you said that thing, we won't fund you. But instead we try to guide you into a direction that it's legal for us to fund you and that it's most helpful for your company to grow. I previously mentioned the hard rules, like the 2 minimum full-time employees, minimum of 30,000 euro investment in own capital, and some kind of a know-how that the product is somewhere that you can at least test it. And of course that you are a stock company and these kind of things. These are the hard rules. We cannot bend those. And even if you fill all of them, it's a decision-based process. So there might be something in your case why we won't fund you anyway. Say it like your team, that you have a game company without any programmers. It's possible, but you would need a really good explanation how you are going to work through that thing. There's the thing that usually when I see Tempo application from game companies, it's people are just giving like, this is our idea of the game, and now we want to spend 100% of the Tempo money to build the demo. That's not allowed. It can be development, but minimum of 40% of the work and equally the money spent into the project must be spent on the market research part. So Tempo is intended for you to learn about the markets. and get more investor interest into it and develop your product so that you can get a better funding round, get the product generate more money to you, and so on. So we can allow some piloting, we can allow market research, customer information collecting, and test marketing. To underline what is the difference between test marketing and marketing is that test marketing is something that gives you information and marketing is something that brings you customers. So if you are creating like test ads and see how they work and destroy them after the small tests, that's test marketing. If you are creating ads and leaving them there and running 1 million UA costs and so on, well, that's definitely marketing. And then going for the application part, when you file an application to us, all of these are filed always through the Business Finland electric services. You can find them from our website. There you will pick tempo and you will file your project description and company description, and along with those you will give us your project plan. The project plan is the most important part. There is a description of what you are doing on the large scale, and then the work packages that create this large scale target that you are aiming towards. And our funding goes to these work packages. And after the project is done, we will check how well you finish the work packages and measure them by goals that are decided during the tempo application process. You will get to talk with our experts who will go through the process with you, and together you will pretty much create this. So you don't need to work this alone, but you need to file something and then they will help you to the end. Hopefully you are pretty far away when this gets far on the way of the project when you file the report, so there is not much to tweak and it can be done within the 40 days. Normally tempo is something between 3 to 12 months project, and the money can be spent on multiple things like wages, purchases, personal side costs, and small amounts to other expenses on certain called flat rate, like plane tickets and expos and something, anything that is related to the project that you are working on, but nothing that is outside of the project, like for example, company offices, rents, cleaning personnel, anything that you would do anyways, even if you wouldn't have the project. All right, so that is tempo. Then R&D funding. This is if tempo is something that all the game companies always do, R&D funding is something that we hope you get to, because this is the actually big money. R&D funding is usually loan based. So it's for something, well, let's go with the example. Clash of Squirrels of War needs a ton of content and really hardcore backend system to run 200,000 simultaneous players. So from there, we are not actually funding the part where you create graphics and create the content and so on. But
Olli,
if you actually, yes?
we still see the tempo continues slide, I think.
Really?
Okay. Yes. Yeah, now we see the R&D. Yes, thank you.
All right, it was probably just lagging there behind. All right, so what we fund on this is not the project. We never fund one game or one product. We fund the company. So in this kind of idea, it would be the server system, the backend thing that would be interesting for us, because you could use it in multiple games after this one too. The content like levels or characters or art, we can fund it a bit, but only so much that it helps you to test the actual product. What would be here the simultaneous backend servers. What do I have on the bullet points? Well, yeah, the money here is meant to give the company a boost. So this is also related to the funding size. So there is no maximum or minimum amount for the loan, but let's say it this way, that it needs to boost your company. So if you are applying for a loan of 30,000 euros, that's not actually boosting. Yes, it can give you a bit of a lifeline and traction and so on, but we are talking more about 100,000 to 200,000 to millions of euros of project size. In the maximum end, the restriction is that you need to be able to fund your own side of the project. So we will never fund a project that we don't trust that you can pay your own part. So on this R&D, typically it's 50% So we pay 50%, you pay 50%. And it can be a grant also, but that needs to be discussed. And the grant side usually requires that there is research to be done. And also it can be a 70% loan. And that also requires that there is research to be done. And with research, I'm not talking about like Googling, how does ChatGPT work? I'm talking about like academic level research. Hey, we are creating this kind of a new lens that needs a different kind of way for light to reach human eye, that level of research. For R&D loans, where Tempo and even Innovation Voucher was once in a lifetime for a company, you can have multiple R&D loans running at the same time, either parallel, hard word for Finn, at the same time, on top of each other, or anything. And that's the sort of beauty of this. Only restriction is that the same person cannot, of course, work too much on the same projects. So if you have a person who is doing 24-hour days for multiple different Business Finland projects, that's not going to run. Let's see what else is there. The important stuff only. Well-funded companies. Yeah, well, there is of course the case that if your company already has a huge VC fund on it, like you already have 5 million euros on your bank account, is there much sense for you to apply for a 5,000 euro innovation voucher? You can just jump to R&D funding instantly and double that 5 million into 10 million. So that's sort of like when you're talking to investors, you can also mention to them that in Finland, there's this possibility to get the government to double their investment into their company, which is usually a pretty good sales pitch. And then the second last bullet point is sort of interesting. Of course, if you're a startup, usually you have one horse that you're running on, and if that horse dies, well, your company is bust, but it doesn't need to be so. So compared to bank loans, Business Finland can turn the loan if the project fails, because this is a risk loan. We can turn it from a loan into a grant. We don't turn it 100% into a grant, but our target is not to drive you into a bankruptcy. We want you to learn from the experience and perhaps develop something new from that one. And yeah, that's about from the R&D for now. But this is, if I would say like the most important things from this speech, Tempo, if you haven't applied for it, that's your first step, and R&D fundings as when you are a funded company. Then we have talent. I hope that the pages update. This is the one that I don't know so much. I don't work on it so much, but it's more intended for people to get experts to work in Finland for the company. To read the bullet points, it's for recruiting people abroad from Finland, bring them to Finland, or get them work for a Finnish company from abroad. There are some rules. The targeted grant is about 20 to 50,000 and 50% of the size, so it's a maximum of 40 to 100,000 euros that we are paying for the project. It's for helping the recruitment process, building international operation culture, change of work, frontline of work, piloting, spiriting of new operating models, and so on. At least before, something I've been asked often is like, can we use these talent explorers, for example, to hire a programmer from abroad? At least previously it was not possible. This was mostly intended for like a marketing bridge, that you need to get to a company to run in Spain. You need a local person in Spain to run the company for that kind of reasons, not for that you need a Spanish person to work for a Finnish company to program your game. For that one, you can just use the Tempo or TKI or the R&D loans. But this is definitely something that you should check from the sites, because I don't know so much about the talent. It's sort of a new instrument, as you can see. All right, then the crown jewel, young innovative companies. So now the League of Squirrels game that we have been building here from the early scratch is a top-selling MOBA. So it's doing awesome. You are already running either huge profits or huge marketing losses, but you have deep pockets and you want to even expand the game beyond what it's now. like put the hockey stick curve into an even more tighter curve at that point. And for that we have the NIU YEC, or Nuoret Innovatiiviset Yritykset, or Young Innovative Companies. This is a huge grant, so it's 500,000 euro and loans for maximum of 750,000, so above 1.2 million is given. And it's usually split into multiple phases, usually 3. And in every phase you get some loan. In the first phase you get grants, and in the later phases you get loans. And you need to reach certain targets to get through each phase. You can consider this like an R&D, like what we had before, but you have already agreed that you will be filing 3 R&Ds for us. And this is like a project that you will go for several years. This is definitely not for early stage companies, and usually the company what I have there below is about 3.7 years old, 14 employees, making about 550,000 in turnover, and has around 1 million in equity investments. And the management is experts, and the company is actually running really well. So examples of companies who have reached NIU is Varjovolt, Supercell, and Amplifier. So like top tier Finnish companies. But this can be, unlike the other money there, this can be especially used for like user acquisition and getting those things running better. Usually we are not funding that much on the user acquisition side, though I know that it's a huge money funnel, but it's not really an innovation that we fund. It's just advertisement. Sorry for the international guys, this one I only have in Finnish because this is a new funding, but this is a super important one, so I'll translate it to you. You can find this on Business Finland websites, or just go to Google, type Business Finland Luova RRF 2023, because this is a EU money that we have, and this is the last year that you can apply for it. There is about 5 million euros that we are giving, and it's a competed money. And that is given not as loans, but as grants and de minimis, so you don't need to pay it back. We have 3 themes that you can apply for, and the Luovien RRF, for translated, it's for creative industries. So if you are in game industry, music industry, arts, whatever you count as creative, you can apply for this. And as long as your project is within these themes, so there are 3 themes. I'll give, instead of translating the titles, I'll explain what they are. The first theme is that you have an IP that is already successful. You guys are in gaming, so you will probably have a game industry IP, and you want to try how does this run as, let's say, an interactive 3D movie. So bringing it there. Or if you have a company that has an IP, for example, as a book, and you as a game company work for it, they could apply it and hire you to do this with this money. Then is the second one. This one is for if you're a company that is not working in creative industries, but you want to use some creative industry skills to improve your business. This is for that one. So gamification. If there is a company, say cleaning company, that wants to use gamification and create an app to gamify their cleaners and hire you for this one, it would be interesting. And number 3 is the one I think is the most important for the gaming companies. So this one is about Createch. So any new technology, be it like blockchains, artificial intelligence, something that is not currently so much used, but you want to use it in a new way. I'm seeing a lot of these applications from game companies that are especially on artificial intelligence. So you could apply for this one to generate something new for creative industries through artificial intelligence. And once again, it's about innovation. So if your company idea is just to generate art with doing some DALL-E or Midjourney stuff, it's not enough. You need to actually create something new. Currently, there's like 3 ways you can apply for this funding. The one that we have already open is the co-research and the R&D type. stuff. So the co-research is if you are working with the university or somebody like that who wants to get more game company information. Okay, that one goes. Aki Parviainen in the Business Finland is running this side. Or you can contact me if you are just a company who wants to apply for this. It would be pretty much the similar what I told about you on the R&D side, but instead of R&D loan, this is going to be an R&D grant. An important part is that you have some research to be done in it. It doesn't need to be academic, but it needs to create new information in some level, and you need to create something innovative. If you're developing, for example, your new own model, that might be in certain cases interesting, or developing your game process through some of these themes, that might be interesting. On the Creative RRF website, there is already a recording of the info we had on the 21st of March, and we will have a next info on the 15th of January, February, March, April, May, June. And after the summer, in end of September, the time to apply for the 50% R&D grants ends, and we open the de minimis on 1st of August. And de minimis is especially, it's more like the Tempo was. Like the Tempo grant was that you're developing a product and you want to just get it done. And that's a 100,000 euro grant where you need to apply, spend 100,000 yourself. It's doesn't need to be 100K, but that's the maximum. It's a 50% grant. So if you have 50,000 to put, we can double it with another 50,000. But once again, Tempo has a bit better setting for you if you are working for that one. And if you haven't already used Tempo, I say that go for Tempo first and leave this to others, because Tempo money is not that competed, and this is competed. We have the maximum of 4.86 that we can give, and it will be all given and decided by the end of the year. Then the exhausting number of Business Finland funding services continues. So we have these explorers: Market Explorer, Exhibition Explorer, and Group Explorer. Previously, we had the Talent Explorer here. So the talent money I mentioned was originally an Explorer also. These ones usually don't so well fit into gaming companies, in my opinion, but I'll go through them anyway. So these are grants, 50% grants are each one of them, and each one of them is used for different reasons. So Market Explorer, it's like a Tempo, but for a company that is over 5 years old. So the company is not applicable anymore for the Tempo money. So they can apply for this one. It's a 5,000 to 40,000 euros. It's getting some new information from a foreign market, so you can hire an expert from there and get some more information. Exhibition Explorer, you plus 3 other companies want to go to an expo in some country and build yourself a stand. I think NeoGames sometimes does a bit of work, like collecting these companies together and creating a group that, hey, you should apply together for this, because Business Finland is paying 50% for your costs. But what we are paying for is only for the expo stand pretty much. So all flight tickets, hotel tickets, entry fees and stuff, it's on you. But I think the Exhibition Explorer is the one that game companies have at least sometimes used, because, well, you guys go to the same places pretty often, Gamescom and so on. And then there is the Group Explorer. This is sort of a weird one, because it's 4 companies from different kind of industries start together to work on some interesting project. So this is 2,500 to 20,000 euro grant for purchased services. And it's for each company alone. They can all apply for this. For example, you could have a shoe company, a game company, a movie company, and I don't know, a comic company. Together they are doing some really new interesting product, and they want to research the market that could fit them. But for Exhibition Explorer and Group Explorer, it's always like 4 companies, and all of them need to file at the same time, and the applications are gathered and approved at the same time. Then finally, for summary and tips about working with Business Finland, I highly recommend that you Google the Business Finland project plan and use that as the project plan that you send to us, be it Tempo, be it R&D. because in that one, it has all the information that we require and none of the stuff that we don't, because otherwise you will be sending us a ton of text. We need to read that and we need to check everything. And there might be like, hey, we are not sure if this is fundable and you need to fix it and so on. With the project plan, everything gets a bit smoother. Like mentioned before, the funding is always decision-based, and even if you hit the hard conditions, it might be possible that you will not get funded for other reasons. But at least the hard conditions must be fulfilled. We don't fund any sole entrepreneurs or TMIs, limited liability company, I think is in English probably. Toiminimi in Finnish.
Private entrepreneur.
Private entrepreneur, thank you.
Yes.
So I couldn't remember the right one. Yes, we don't fund private entrepreneurs. All the funding is, of course, for international market products that you go abroad of Finland. Easy for games, you always do that. And I suggest that you are in contact with us before you apply, so we can go through like what is your company and what you are applying for, and like go through different kind of plot holes that you might fall into before you apply. So we both know that is it worth the effort, that there might be some reason in your company like we cannot fund it, even though if your project and team and everything is awesome, there might be something. And the final is that you cannot actually say like wrong things to us, that everybody at Business Finland, we aim to help you and perhaps even guide you to the best of our skills. It may be in business or at least in applying for the funding. And we always try to like find the best way to help the Finnish companies grow, because that's like our main job, to help the Finnish industry, Finnish economy grow. Then there's the, how can I get somebody to contact from Business Finland? If your company already has a Business Finland account lead, well, that's the person, or the business coach. If you're in Tempo side, contact him or her. And otherwise, you can go to the Business Finland website and pick the Become a Customer service and sign up through there. This is not, of course, necessary. You can just go to the electric service and sign up for funding and send your project plan, but I think it's easier for you and saves time from everybody else. And everybody, if you do it this way. All right, and finally, the Business Finland website, go there for more information, double check everything that I said before, that what are the funding instruments, and try to remember it so that if you get Tempo, you can no longer apply for the innovation voucher. And if you already have an R&D running with us for several hundreds of thousands and you try to apply for a Tempo, it creates an interesting question that like, what is the effect of this 50,000 euro in your project if we are already funding you with 500,000 on this other one? So this kind of stuff. But all right, otherwise my presentation is here and we can stop the recording at this point and turn into questions and answers.